When the Trump Department of Justice decided to stop defending the ATF's pistol brace rule, it wasn't just another legal decision. This was a complete surrender that caught everyone off guard. The ATF's power to redefine millions of firearms literally fell apart in a single day. But the mainstream media isn't giving you the full picture. The truth is, the real fight is only getting started now. What comes next is going to decide whether government agencies that nobody elected can change gun laws on their own without any input from Congress. Before we get into the details, I need you to do something really quick. Smash that like button right now if you care about protecting your Second Amendment rights. It only takes a second, and it makes a huge difference in getting this information out to more people who need it. Also, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future updates on your rights. Trust me, you're going to want to stay informed about this stuff. The Trump administration just made a move that would have seemed impossible even half a year ago. They officially pulled back from defending one of the most aggressive gun regulations we've seen in modern times. The Fifth Circuit appeal in Mock v. Garland is completely finished, and along with it went the ATF's plan to make criminals out of somewhere between 10 to 40 million Americans who own pistol braces. These weren't dangerous criminals or gang members. We're talking about disabled veterans, people who compete in shooting sports, and regular Americans who purchased a legal product that the ATF itself had said was perfectly fine for years. Then suddenly, without warning, the agency flipped the script and decided those exact same braces turned their pistols into short-barreled rifles. Every single one of these devices now carried the threat of 10 years in federal prison and a $250,000 fine if people didn't register them. Some estimates say the rule could have brought in more than $4 billion in tax money if everyone had followed the rules, but the reality is that less than 5% of owners actually went through with registration. Here's the part that should really worry you, though. Even with the DOJ backing away and Judge O'Connor throwing out the rule across the entire country, the ATF is still operating like nothing ever happened. That raises the question that nobody in the media seems interested in asking. If this rule is supposed to be dead, why are people still getting arrested for it? While everyone was busy celebrating what looked like the end of the pistol brace rule, the ATF quietly continued enforcement through a legal backdoor that most people have no idea even exists. They're not relying on the canceled regulation anymore. Instead, they're going straight to the National Firearms Act itself, the same law from 1934 that was originally created to control Tommy guns and sawed-off shotguns back during Prohibition. The ATF is now making the argument that this old definition by itself gives them the power to call pistol braces rifle stocks, which would automatically make millions of pistols with braces illegal. They don't need any new rule to do this. Gun Owners of America has collected evidence of multiple cases where this exact approach is being used right at this moment. In United States v. Toronto, federal prosecutors went after a man for having an unregistered CZ Scorpion pistol that had a brace on it, and they didn't even mention the canceled ATF rule. They went straight to the NFA statute itself. There's another case out in Arizona where a veteran bought his pistol with a brace legally back in 2019, only to end up facing felony charges in 2024 because the ATF claimed the law had always made it illegal. The pattern here is obvious. The ATF doesn't actually need their rule to come back. But there's one legal tool that could shut this down permanently, and it's exactly why Texas and GOA refused to give up the fight. Most people assume the Mock versus Garland victory meant the battle was over, but the reality is that was just a procedural win. Judge O'Connor decided that the ATF had violated the Administrative Procedure Act by pushing the rule through too fast without proper public comment periods and without doing the required economic analysis. The problem is that procedural violations can be corrected. The ATF could rewrite the entire rule tomorrow, check every single bureaucratic box they're supposed to, and then put out the exact same restrictions under a different name. That's exactly why Gun Owners of America and Texas are pushing for a permanent injunction, not just against this specific rule, but against the ATF's entire interpretation of the NFA itself. If the court grants this, the injunction would legally prevent the agency from ever classifying pistol braces as rifle stocks again, no matter what any future administration might want. The legal basis for this argument has gotten much stronger thanks to two important Supreme Court decisions. In West Virginia versus EPA back in 2022, the court created something called the Major Questions Doctrine, which basically says that federal agencies can't just claim massive new powers over issues that have huge economic or political importance unless Congress specifically and clearly gave them that authority. Then in Bruin versus Niceborough, also in 2022, the Supreme Court decided that any gun regulation has to match up with the nation's historical tradition of regulating firearms. When you put these two cases together, they give Texas and GOA a constitutional blueprint for taking away the ATF's power to reinterpret gun laws without Congress being involved. That's why the ATF is pushing so hard on enforcement right now before the injunction can be made final. Even after the nationwide cancellation of the rule, ATF field offices all over the country are still treating pistols with braces as unregistered short-barreled rifles in active criminal cases. The legal team at GOA has put together evidence showing that at least a dozen federal prosecutions are moving ahead using the language from the NFA statute, completely ignoring what Judge O'Connor ruled. In one case down in Florida, a man got pulled over because of a broken tail light, and officers found a braced AR pistol in his car. He wasn't charged under the ATF rule. They charged him under 26 U.S.C. 5861, which is the main NFA statute, for having an unregistered firearm. Another case in Texas involves someone who owns a gun store and sold pistols with braces during the period when the rule was supposed to have a grace period. The ATF raided his store in early 2024, took his inventory, and is now going after him with criminal charges for dealing in unregistered NFA firearms. These aren't just random isolated incidents either. GOA has gotten reports from members in at least 8 different states describing similar actions from the ATF, including seizure letters, investigative visits, and warnings that pistols with braces still need to be registered even though the rule got struck down. But what the ATF is doing right now isn't even the most dangerous part. It's what they're planning to do in the future if the injunction doesn't go through. If the ATF manages to enforce pistol brace restrictions without having a valid rule in place, they'll have created a proven method for regulating any firearm accessory or component without ever needing Congress to pass a law. The ATF recently came out and declared that forced reset triggers are machine guns under the National Firearms Act, even though these triggers don't actually meet the legal definition of a machine gun, which requires a weapon to fire multiple rounds with just one trigger pull. Forced reset triggers still need one pull for each shot, but the ATF is claiming that the reset mechanism makes them basically the same as machine guns. In a similar way, the agency is going after 80% lower receivers, saying they're firearms even though federal law defines a firearm as a device that has a receiver, not just a piece of metal that might eventually become one. The economic damage alone is massive. The firearms industry brings in more than $28 billion every year, and accessories make up almost 40% of that entire market. A single reinterpretation by the ATF can wipe out entire product categories overnight, driving manufacturers and retailers into bankruptcy after they built their businesses around products the government had previously approved. But there's an even bigger constitutional crisis developing here that goes way beyond guns, and it's why this case is important even if you've never picked up a firearm in your entire life. At the heart of it, the pistol brace fight is really about whether federal agencies can create criminal laws without Congress being involved. Article 1 of the Constitution gives legislative power only to Congress, which means that only the representatives we elect can write laws that come with criminal penalties. But over the last 100 years, Congress has handed over enormous amounts of power to administrative agencies through laws that are written too vaguely. And those agencies have used that vagueness to expand their authority way beyond what the original laws were meant to allow. The Major Questions Doctrine from West Virginia versus EPA established that agencies can't make decisions that have massive economic and political impact without clear authorization from Congress. Gun owners of America and Texas are making the argument that these legal precedents apply directly to how the ATF is enforcing pistol brace rules. They're asking the court to decide that the end-phase definition of a short-barreled rifle does not include pistols that have stabilizing braces on them, and that the ATF doesn't have the authority to expand that definition unless Congress passes a brand new law. If the court agrees with this argument, it won't just protect pistol braces. It will create a binding legal precedent that puts limits on every federal agency's ability to regulate through their own interpretation of laws. That's why this case has brought in support through amicus briefs from organizations that go far beyond just the gun rights community. Libertarian legal foundations have joined in, along with constitutional scholars and even some business trade groups that are concerned about regulatory overreach affecting their own industries. The collapse of the ATF's position isn't the end of this story. It's actually the beginning of what might be the most important Second Amendment legal battle we've seen in decades. Whether this turns into a permanent victory or just a temporary break depends completely on what happens in that Texas courtroom over the next few weeks. The outcome of this case is going to set the tone for how much power unelected government agencies have to change laws that affect millions of Americans. It's about drawing a line on whether bureaucrats can turn law-abiding citizens into felons overnight just by changing their interpretation of old laws. This is a fight about protecting constitutional rights and making sure that the people who make our laws are the ones we actually vote for, not agency officials who can rewrite regulations whenever they want. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the legal battle is far from finished. If you found this information valuable, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It helps get this critical information in front of more gun owners who need to know about these changes. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on your rights. Share this video with every gun owner you know because this information is too important to keep to yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.